Wow, look at that. Gemini 8.
What?
Oh, the man we're going to see? Colonel Marcus Aurelius Belt nearly died on that mission. Had to make an emergency landing right in the middle of the Pacific Ocean.
You remember all that stuff?
You never wanted to be an astronaut when you were a kid, Scully?
I guess I missed that phase.
Hello, and welcome to Discovering the X-Files, the podcast in which a newbie, that's me, takes a deep dive into the entirety of Chris Carter's creepy universe, as longtime fans escort me on the journey, a journey filled with paranoid conspiracies and monsters of the week. I'm Erix Antoine, and today I'm once again sitting down with my friend Natalia Castro, who's calling in from Colombia. We'll be discussing the episode Space, which originally aired in the US on November 12, 1993. It was written by Chris Carter and directed by William Graham. In this episode, Mulder and Scully investigate possible sabotage at NASA, and Mulder gets to meet his childhood hero, who unfortunately may be possessed by an extraterrestrial entity. Ed Lauter and Susanna Thompson guest star, and both give strong, memorable performances in this flawed but intriguing episode. After the break, Natalia and I are going to get into it. Stick around.
You want to know why I lied to them? You're asking yourself if this means I'd lie to you. You know what it means to be an astronaut, sir. You risk your life every time you get into your spacecraft, for nothing more than the good progress of mankind.
You've got no argument for me, sir. You're true American heroes.
Heroes. We used to make headlines when we did our job right. Now they bury in the back of the paper. You make the front page today only if you screw up.
I thought this was an interesting episode. I don't remember if I had ever seen it before. And it's an intriguing episode, Space. It has a really good performances from the guest actors. From Ed Lauter, who's an character actor I've always loved, ever since I think I first noticed him in Death Wish 3. But he did tons of stuff over the years. And apparently, unfortunately, I think he passed away several years ago now. But he was a great character actor. He just showed up in a lot of things. And at first, it's a little bit okay. He's playing like an astronaut, and I was a little taken aback seeing him in his opening scene with that toupee he's wearing and everything else. But he's a very intriguing character, and I think he brings him to life really, really well. And the other guest performance is by Susanna Thompson, who has been on some episodes of Star Trek, so that's where I recognized her from. I believe
She's been in
played-
everything. There was a 90s show where it was about two families and like two adults that got divorced, and then they showed both relationships, and she played like the mom, like the divorced mom, basically. But she was really good. She's been in a lot of things.
Yeah, one of the things that I really liked her in was in Deep Space Nine, in a classic episode, which I can't remember what episode it is, but she played Dax's former wife or something, from like a previous incarnation of Dax, and and she was really good in that role, and they have that very famous, very controversial scene between her and Terry Farrell, that at the time like raised a lot of eyebrows. But I remember, I think she was on one or two episodes of Next Generation as well.
Yeah, I just
And
found
so
the show she was on that I'm talking about. It's called Once and Again.
Once and Again.
Yeah, which Evan Rachel Wood was in it.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Never watched that, but in any case, yeah, she's a great, character actress as well, who showed up in tons of stuff. Very good presence. And this was a very intriguing episode. It has a very interesting pace to it. It has a very sort of, it's their attempts. It's about, I was reading like behind the scenes. They wanted it to be sort of an inexpensive kind of bottle episode, but it still wound up being like the most expensive episode of the season, even though like they used they used tons of like stock footage that they got from NASA and like all this stuff, but it still ended up being the most expensive show of the season. And I'm going like, really? Oh well, too bad they couldn't work a little harder on that special effect for the alien ghost or
Oh,
like
the
whatever.
alien, yeah, the alien ghost was really cheap looking. That being said,
Yes.
I love this episode. I loved it
Okay.
so much. Oh
Yeah,
my God.
I want you to tell me a little bit about that. So you as a fan, go ahead, go nuts. Praise the episode. Tell me what you love about it.
After so many years, it's one of the episodes that I still sort of remember. Um, and last time I told you that I was basically a fan for the alien stuff, and this wasn't part of the mythology, but it was kind of adjacent to it. So I was there for it. I loved it. It was a bit light on Scully. Scully was kind of there just to contradict Mulder, but it really showcased Mulder so well.
Yeah,
Him geeking out about the astronaut. That was awesome.
yeah. No, that is good. That shows a really nice. It shows a sweet side to him. It shows he regresses into his like childhood basically in this episode. You know, he's
Oh,
starstruck. He's meeting his childhood hero and just gushing like completely. And yeah, the company definitely sells that very well. Interesting how you say that it's light on Scully. I think it's kind of light on Mulder and Scully in the sense that this is similar to one of the previous episodes. Um, it's similar to Shadows in the sense that I mean it's a better episode than Shadows. I did not like Shadows, but it's similar in the sense that Mulder and Scully are observers. You
mm-hmm.
know, they're not active participants. Like really, they're not active in what's happening. Everything kind of happens around them. They're investigating, but they don't actually resolve anything or bring about anything. They're just sort of observers. That's what I thought while watching this. I think that the story is more compelling than in Shadows, so it doesn't really matter. It's they're observers, and it's sort of like their audience surrogates. Also, they're thrust into this world for which Mulder has a lot of affection. The whole it's kind of funny. You really do see the difference between Mulder and Scully. You know, he grew
Yep.
up fantasizing about this, wanting to be an astronaut. He asks this of Scully. He's just like, didn't you want to be an astronaut when you were a kid? And she kind of brushes off that in a very sort of nope. She's always been pragmatic. Then apparently, like this has always been her. Whereas Mulder, ever since he was a kid, he's always been about his quest for the unknown kind
Yep.
of thing. And so you see that, you see how that's been there, and the company really sells that. And he's very, the character gets really into it. He's really involved. He gets very personally involved in this mission. And this whole thing about him meeting his childhood hero and being starstruck, but then at one point actually starting to have doubts, start to question the character of his childhood hero. Kind of plays into that whole thing that you shouldn't meet your heroes because they will inevitably disappoint you, and that's kind of what happens to Mulder here for a brief moment. He
Yep.
starts to wonder if maybe his hero hasn't been corrupted.
That's what I liked about this episode. That okay, it shows like the many faces of Mulder, if you will. So you have the geeky, like nerding out guy, and then you have the questioning guy, and then at one point he goes into professional mode, and because he's also a profiler, and he's a trained psychologist, right?
Right.
When what's his name, the astronaut,
Major Belt.
Major Bell, when Major Bell freaks out in his office, and then Mulder gets really serious and points his fingers and says, "Focus, focus," and he goes into professional mode. That
Yes.
I thought it was like a great display of what he's as a character.
Yeah, he has to take charge. I mean,
Yeah.
he's dealing with someone, and at that point, he's dealing uh, with someone he really admired as a kid, but here he has to sort of take charge,
Yep.
and you know, right, Scully's screaming at him because he could die any minute now. Just what are you doing? You're gonna push him into an aneurysm, and he's just like, nope, nope. He knows what he's doing. He sort of takes control of the situation in a
Yeah.
way that yeah is very effective,
Hmm.
and yeah, I mean, obviously they are active in certain aspects of it. But I think what I meant by the whole passivity thing is that they really are observers. That
Yeah, they are
they're
observers. That's true.
I mean, they're brought into this world because of they're contacted by
Hmm.
what was her name, Michelle.
Yeah.
She contacts them with the information about possible sabotage. So they're investigating this,
Hmm.
but by the end of it, they really have just observed this event. Ultimately, it's something that happens that they're able to intervene in a certain way, sort of help out, but it really is just something that's going on there between Major Belt and NASA and the whole project. Ultimately, they're still the architects of everything.
Yeah.
Whereas, well, Mulder and Scully are just observers here. They don't actually resolve anything. They don't bring anything. And I mean, since there's an ambiguity to the whole story, like I think that what Chris Carter wrote here is still one of those, still falling in line where it's one of those ambiguous mysteries, where it never really explains anything. It sort of just lets it all just, it allows it to remain unresolved in a certain way, because
Yeah.
you don't know what that alien presence is. You don't know exactly what its motivation is. You don't really know much. I mean, it's all about just little hints and things that you have to put it all together, because that's what Major Belt is saying, when he's agonizing. He's like, it's because they don't want you to know.
Hmm.
So yeah, you get the sense that it's an alien presence that is trying to protect a secret. It's trying to protect uh, their existence or the reality of what they are, because they don't want you to know. So they don't want us to know that they exist or that whatever. That face on Mars really is a face, which ultimately, I mean, that was Chris Carter's inspiration for the episode, was the face on Mars.
Yeah.
Which has been explained away, and even in this episode, it's explained away as just a normal rock formation, just something that coincidentally kind of looks like a face, but not that they don't really think that it's a sculpted face.
Yeah.
They've come to explain it away. But I guess Carter is just like, well, what if it were a face? What if this were a real thing? It sort of explores that concept without really going all the way and having answers. It just asks questions. It's a questioning episode, and it just asks questions about the possibility of what this could be. And
Yeah, but generally speaking, in terms of their approach to aliens, I think that's how it was done. I don't know if I'm remembering correctly, but I think we only got like real answers about the alien mythology stuff like way in advance, like way into like season 6 or 5. Like
mhm.
actual concrete answers didn't come really soon.
Sure, I mean
Yeah,
that, and that's good in a way, because I
yeah,
think that one of the ways that the show works is that it doesn't necessarily feel the need to answer everything,
yeah,
and it establishes that right away, because in the pilot it doesn't answer anything, and
yeah,
so it's basically establishes this, I guess, formula or pattern where you're going to have a lot of mysteries. It's going to There are going to be a lot of questions. We're not necessarily going to solve that for you. We're going to give you little signposts, little clues, little things are going to be there, and you as an audience member can sort of piece it together in your head and speculate about a lot of things. But we're never going to necessarily solve everything, and that's good, especially when you're trying to ground it in reality in such a when you're trying to make it as authentic feeling as possible, because this is trying to feel like a legitimate investigative story. And if it actually gave us answers, then it would just seem really silly, really like it'd be harder to believe if you're trying to tell me this is true and this is what's happening. It's because they're trying to connect it to the real world in as you know in as organic a way as possible. And one thing they do in this episode, which some could see as a little bit tasteless, is that they weave in real life tragedy, and they imply that this fictional character and this fictional thing is the cause of the Challenger disaster. That's the
yeah.
implication. And that's, I mean, for some people that could be seen as exploitative and tasteless, and I mean maybe it is. I don't. I can imagine it feeling that way for somebody personally connected to that tragedy, but I think as a piece of speculative fiction, it's fine. Like I think that just as something you throw in there just to give some context to the story and to the episode, I think it works, and it's done in a way that's not too it's not too in your face. It's just it's kind of it made me think that there's this whole show that came in the wake of X Files called Dark Skies. Now, did you ever watch Dark Skies?
No.
Okay, well, Dark Skies was kind of an X Files sort of thing that took place in the '60s, and and it was about that. It was very similar. You had like a Mulder and Scully type, and they were investigating. But the difference was that in Dark Skies, they were taking real historical events and sort of tying them in to this overarching alien mythology. And one of those things was the Kennedy assassination.
Mm-hmm.
So, and basically they have Jack Ruby get possessed by like an alien slug, and he goes and he kills Lee Harvey Oswald, and you go like, okay, so they're implying that this is all some kind of alien conspiracy, and that still manages to work as entertainment, and I think so does this.
Yeah, I don't think it's tasteless. I mean, we would have to start like discrediting a lot of work. I mean, you have uh, like half the work of Philip K. Dick, because that was alternate history and it had a lot to do with Nazis. And then there's uh, the X-Men, and then there's Travelers with 9/11, and yeah, there are many examples of just alternate history.
Yeah, well, I mean, it helps when you take something real like that. It
Yeah,
helps to it makes it more. It gives it a feeling of authenticity, and it's not so tasteless. I mean, I think it would have been worse if the Challenger at the time had been a very recent thing.
yeah, that's the thing.
Yeah,
There has to be a lot of distance between the
yeah,
show and the event for it to work.
yeah. I mean, there was enough. I guess depending on where you're standing, there was enough distance. I mean, we're talking about. I mean, maybe it was only about 7 years, but it's still sort of like there's distance there.
Yeah.
And you can reflect on it. It's not like they were doing a 9/11 thing like in 2002. They gave it some distance. So I think
Yep.
that and again, it's this thing they put in there. I think just to try to give it some more authenticity. But I do know that again, much like the other episode that we talked about, uh, the writers, at least Chris Carter himself, was a little bit dissatisfied with the final episode, and I
Hmm.
think part of it has to do with that there are a lot of things that he was forced to do because of budget.
Yeah.
So like for instance, they use a lot of stock footage. We never actually see the astronauts in the ships, in
Hmm.
the shuttles. We never actually see that. Anytime they show shuttles, it's footage that they got from NASA. And that leads to one of the funniest effect shot in the whole thing, where you have this like stock footage of the shuttle in orbit, and then the alien entity sort of floating into it,
Oh, that
and
was bad. But
and,
yeah.
and you just hear the voiceover going like, "Oh my God, it's some kind of ghost." I mean, I get it, but then that begs the question: Look, if you have such an elaborate idea, and you're, you are aware of what you're. I mean, you're one of the showrunners, and you're aware of what kind of budget you're working with, and I think that you would know beforehand. Are we ever going to be able to depict this? We're not going to be able to actually show the inside of the shuttle. We don't have the budget for it. So that also begs the question, like, well, then why do it? Why not wait until you are in a position where you can do things a little, where you can actually show that in a better way than to have to rely on like stock footage and things like that. I mean, it just says that maybe he really wanted to tell this story, and he figured, well, this is the best we can do right now, so the hell with it. I mean, at that point, you don't know if you're even going to be renewed for a second season or how this is going to go. So you just go, okay. I mean, I'll tell the story because I really want to do this story, and the hell with it. We'll do what we can. We'll use stock footage. We'll have a floating ghost. It's kind of funny.
But here's the thing. Okay, so they could have used like the magical strategy for horror movies with the which is don't show.
Yeah,
Yeah, so they could have used just like really scary sound mix and not shown the ghost. So maybe
yeah,
it was like them trying to force their idea beyond what they could do in terms of effects instead of just trying to find like an alternative way to approach it.
right.
But back in the
Yeah,
day, I mean, look, I used to watch a show called Super Force after school, and the effects were horrible, but I loved that show. So I guess if you really get into the story, it doesn't really matter.
No, no, it doesn't matter. You're absolutely right. Phil, let me
Yeah.
stop you for a second. Super Force. Super Force.
Oh my God.
What is
I
this?
found the pilot on YouTube and I started watching it and it looks so bad. Oh my God. Okay, so this is the story of an astronaut. He's the only survivor of a mission to Mars. So he returns to Earth and he is like a superhero, but then something happens with his brother, like he gets killed or goes to jail or becomes a criminal. I don't remember. And he becomes a cop and somehow gets involved with like a government program where he gets super advanced armor and he fights crime.
Wow.
And I
Okay.
really liked that show. It was like a half-hour show. It went on for like 2 seasons. I loved it. The effects were crap. They were just the worst, but it was great.
I've never heard of this show.
Are
Where is
you
it?
kidding me?
Is it American?
I think it's American and Canadian.
It's probably Canadian then. It's probably because I'm gonna assume you watched it like in Colombia or something.
Oh yeah, I did.
Yeah. So maybe it's something that never really made it to the States.
Oh
Yeah.
my God. But
Yeah.
the lead, his name is Ken Olin, and he's American, I
Oh,
think.
I know Ken Olin. No, of course
Yeah,
Ken Olin was on. He was on 30 something.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Ken Olin was on 30 something, and then he
But
became
not
a big.
Olin. It's Ken. Okay, no, I don't think we're talking about the same guy. I think they have the really similar last names, but it's not the same guy.
Well, hang on a second. I'm gonna go ahead and look it up
Oh, yeah, me too.
because now I'm not gonna be satisfied until I know.
Yeah, yeah,
Super
It's
Force.
Ken Oland. So it's not the same guy.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It's an American action adventure series
Oh
that
crap.
aired
No, not
in.
Canadian.
It's from the
Okay.
90s.
He's
Yeah,
from the
you're right. Ken Oland. Yeah, I thought you said
yeah.
Olin, like from. Yeah, this
Yeah,
is
yeah,
wow. This is had 48 episodes.
yeah.
First run syndicate was a syndicated. Wow, that's really
And it
weird.
was shot
And
in Florida. Yeah.
yeah, much like I think Superboy was also shot in Florida.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, no, it's okay. Yeah, I get it. Yeah, this does look really cheesy.
Oh
I
my
won't,
God. It's the
I
best
won't
in the
argue
world.
that with you. Yeah. But to your point about it not mattering, you're right. It does not matter. It doesn't matter if the story is solid enough. Of course, it doesn't really matter if the effects are cheesy. You kind of go along with it. Here, though, it is a little distracting because of what you just said. They didn't need to. They really didn't need to show any of this. And even when like they always have those shots which I think were supposed to be very eerie when with like the face sort of appearing, on
Yep.
Ed Lauder's face, like the face just sort of appearing on his face and him going like, oh, right. And it's kind of like you realize that all they did is just it's some optical effect that they sort of superimpose, and it looks cheesy. And at that moment, you notice it, and you shouldn't. And it's like you get the sense that they knew better. Like did they
Yeah.
need to do that? Did they need? They want to dramatize the whole thing of like the fate, like the entity coming in and out of him or whatever. And fine, I guess they couldn't figure out any other way to do it. But it is distracting, and it makes potentially dramatic, shocking, scary moments into very funny moments.
But here's the thing.
Yeah,
Okay, so this episode aired in 1993. So I wonder if it is distracting for us now, but it wasn't back then. Because back then, effects for TV weren't that great.
sure,
Yeah.
sure.
So maybe at the time it looked scary. Right now it looks really bad.
Yeah, I mean that would be something. I mean, there's no way for me to know.
Yeah.
I didn't because if I did see this episode, I certainly didn't see it during its original run, and I'm
Mhm.
thinking that maybe I didn't see it at all because there's no way for us to know. But I mean, it didn't
Yeah, I don't
have.
remember.
Yeah,
I,
effects back then were all over. They weren't great, obviously, but one thing that this show has been doing pretty well is its effects. I mean, they tend to handle things with minimalism because they take advantage of the fact that they don't have they're not going to have feature film quality effects. They know that, so they always sort of downplay that. They always there's a lot of restraint in what they show in the action scenes and in in the effect shots and things like that. So this kind of goes against their better instincts in any case, because they should have.
Yeah.
It just I don't think even in '93 this must have been kind of like I don't know that it had the desired effect. Maybe for a kid or something, but like
For
if you're
sure.
like but it's I really think that yeah, it was a bad decision. It
It
doesn't
was,
completely
yeah,
ruin the
they were
episode, but
forcing it.
it was bad. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a little bit. It just sort of doesn't quite work.
Yeah.
I'll say that. Like the superimposed face is just not the way to go there.
Yeah,
But
I think
yeah,
Supernatural was like, I mean, Supernatural's been going for like ever, right? But one thing that's very good about it, or that was up to the point where I watched it, because I stopped watching many years ago, it was that mostly they try not to show the monster that much, so it was very suspenseful, and that's what I mean by the horror strategy of not showing the monster.
yeah. Which I think in some way they're kind of trying to do that here. They're. I think in their view this was minimalist,
Yeah,
but you do still have that weird looking face, and you do still have that like ghostly humanoid ghostly figure that floats out of people and floats out into the sky, and like it and that thing that's another thing too, like by giving it this humanoid shape you're sort of yeah, it's limiting the imagination, right? I mean
yeah,
it so it's implying that these ghosts have like a human form. It's not even clear like if this is their actual form or if it's never really clear what it is. And again, that's okay,
yeah,
but by literalizing it so much though, that's what I mean. Like they would have done better by just having everything be more suggested than it is,
yeah.
you know, than actually seeing all that stuff.
I
What you're
just thought
saying.
about something. Maybe they were trying to stay too faithful to the face on Mars, like the actual rock formation, because there is a show on Netflix. It's a British show. It's only 3 episodes long. It's called Residue. There is it's sort of like a smoke monster, and it also
Okay.
takes like a humanoid form at some point, and it's really well done. Now this show is modern, so yeah, they're more advanced,
Sure.
but it was a very like subtle approach. So I don't know. Maybe they were just trying to say too literal to the face.
Yeah, well, that is true. I mean, the face that you see, yes. I mean, the idea is that that face you see on Mars is basically that face that keeps showing up, that it's that face, right?
Yeah,
And so I get that. I get wanting to use the face, but I think that they use it too much
yeah, yeah.
because,
They should have done something different completely.
yeah, I mean, the first time you see it, in the cold open, it's creepy because you see this brief little flash, and then, you know, that's it, right? But eventually, I think what I'm referring more to the fact that they just repeatedly show it. I
Oh
think
yeah,
we already got the idea that he's possessed by this thing. So, by not focusing on it so much when you see his transformations, that's the part that I think could have benefited from just you don't need to do it. I think we get
yeah.
it.
Don't show it.
You yeah. So brief little flashes of the face could be effective. Whether it's in the cold open or when Michelle is driving in the rain and it comes in through her windshield. Again, a brief, effective. It's when the ghost tries to pull a Karen Silkwood on her, and so it shows up there, and that's a nice shocking moment. Also, little things like that are very effective, and like the episode in general it's an effective story. It's suspenseful. It's intriguing.
Yeah.
It has the feeling of like a conspiracy thriller, that
Yes.
of the type that they're trying to do on this show. It's very much in that vein, but it's just for me that's like my one complaint with it. I think that this was one thing they could have done without.
Yeah, yeah. They could have shown it one time, like the
Yeah.
time when uh the face is superimposed on Belt's face.
Yes.
Just show it that one time, and then you know.
Yeah. I mean, you need shit for a second. So I get it.
Yeah.
And the implication, of course, is that then they see it. Like it's this ghostly entity that they can see because like when he's convulsing on the gurney,
Yeah.
and she's like, "That's the face that I saw." So I mean, it's fine. I mean, I guess they did what they could, but I think that they overused that effect
Yeah.
to a comical result. Like the one thing that I'll say that I like about this is that it is kind of a tragic story. It is it's a conspiracy thriller, and it ultimately has the same spirit of the conspiracy thrillers that it's emulating. Films like Silkwood or The China Syndrome
Yeah.
always have an ultimately tragic ending because that's the idea. Here's this. Major Belt is ultimately a tragic protagonist because
I like that he gets redeemed at the end. I really like that.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. I mean, the point is, yeah, he's not bad. It's the entity that possesses him and compels him to sabotage the mission.
He's unconsciously trying to save those astronauts, and that's it's not a villain.
No, he's not a villain, not in the traditional sense.
Yeah.
And I mean, I really like Lauder's performance. Here's where he really sells you on that conflict that the character is having, even though it's a little bit. It's the idea of the conflict. It's literal. He's really having a conflict with an entity that's inside him, and so that leads to some histrionic acting choices, but they work. He really makes physical that internal struggle,
Yeah.
and I think that gives the episode some power, and allows the tragedy to play out in a way that makes sense, leading to his final sacrifice. It works out well, and I think that they make a good choice how he redeems himself, and so Mulder, uh, in a sense, is able to preserve the heroic view that he had,
Yeah.
and that in the end it was still a heroic act. He was still a hero. He was still somebody who was willing to lay his life on the line, to actually sacrifice himself for the good of other people, which is what that line is a little hokey. He goes like that an astronaut always is prepared to do that, just to sacrifice their lives for the good of the mission, or whatever, however he says it. But it works.
Yeah.
It's an
It's a cheesy line, but
appropriately.
we get it.
Yeah, we get it. Like and and again, you see Duchovny, you see Mulder embracing this. He manages to preserve his appreciation, his admiration for this childhood hero, and I think that works. And it gives the story a nice little satisfying button, because they're not going to resolve the question, but the arc is that the arc of the story is that Mulder has a chance to meet his childhood hero. He has a chance to be disappointed by his childhood hero, and then he has a chance to redeem his childhood hero. So that, if you can focus on that part of it, I think that part of it is actually very nicely handled.
It's really good. Yeah.
I don't think he ever really knew exactly how it was working through him. Or if he ever knew that he was responsible for his own actions.
He ordered those x-rays of the damaged parts.
You saw what I saw, Scully. I think he was trying to warn her. I think that he sent Michelle those x-rays like he was trying to reach out to her without quite knowing why. As if his own instinctual impulse was to save those men.
While simultaneously trying to kill them?
Scully, we send those men up into space to unlock the doors of the universe, and we don't even know what's behind them. I think whatever it was, he took it with him. And in the end, that was the only way he knew how to stop it. He gave his own life. As an astronaut, that was something he was prepared to do.
And there you have it. I hope you enjoyed our discussion. And if you did, please subscribe to the podcast, give us a like, take a minute to write a positive review, and go ahead and spread the word on social media. The podcast is available on Anchor FM, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and other platforms. Look for the Erix Antoine Network on Facebook or on YouTube. You can also follow me on Twitter at ErixAntoineNet, and check out my film reviews on Letterboxd if you are so inclined. I'm Erix Antoine. I'll be back in a few days when Daniel and I will be talking about Fallen Angel, which I know sounds like the title of a Mariah Carey song from 1992 or something, but It is not quite as sweet or syrupy a thing as its title implies. I hope you'll join us, and until then, let's all remember that the truth is out there. See you next time.